You felt it at the grocery store. You felt it when you filled up your tank. You felt it when your landlord handed you your renewal and the number was higher than last year. Again. And you told yourself, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm spending too much. Maybe I just need to budget better. It's not you. Last month, the United States government confirmed that inflation jumped to 3.3%. That is the biggest single-month acceleration in almost 4 years. And what did they say about it? They said it was a bump, a blip. They said, don't worry. They said, trust the process. But nobody, not the news, not your bank, not your financial advisor, sat down and told you what that number actually does to your life, to your savings, to your rent, to your future. That's what this video is. Because the truth is, what's happening to your money right now is not an accident, it's not a glitch, and it is absolutely not temporary. Let me ask you something. Have you ever worked harder than the year before? More hours, more stress, more sacrifice, and somehow still felt like you were falling behind? That feeling is not in your head. That feeling has a name, and it's called inflation. Not the textbook definition, not the version they taught you in school. The real version, the version that actually affects your life. Here's what inflation really is. Every single dollar you earn, every dollar in your savings account, your wallet, your piggy bank has a value. Not just the number printed on it, but what it can actually buy. And inflation is the quiet, legal, government-approved process by which that value shrinks. Every month, every year, without your permission, without your signature, without anyone telling you it's happening. In 2020, $100 filled your grocery cart for a week. Today, that same $100 runs out before you finished your list. Nothing changed about the bill. The ink is the same, the number is the same, but its power, what economists call purchasing power, has been quietly drained away. And here's the part that should make you angry. The people who designed this system, the central banks, the treasury departments, the financial institutions, they don't just know this is happening. They plan for it. They target it. The Federal Reserve has an official inflation target of 2% per year. Think about what that means. A 2% annual inflation target means the people controlling your money have decided in advance that your dollar should be worth 2% less every single year. Not accidentally, not reluctantly, by design. Over 10 years at 2% inflation, you lose roughly 18% of your purchasing power. Over 20 years, more than 33%. Now imagine what happens when inflation runs above that target. At 3.3%. For multiple years. For people who aren't getting matching raises. For people whose rent keeps climbing. For people who are doing everything right and still losing ground. That's not a personal failure. That's a system working exactly as intended, just not for you. Let's stop talking about percentages and start talking about your actual life. The median household income in the United States is around $80,000 a year. That means roughly half of American households earn less than that. A 3.3% inflation rate on an $80,000 income means that household effectively lost $2,640 in purchasing power over the last 12 months. Not because they made bad decisions. Not because they bought things they didn't need. Just because the cost of existing went up and their income didn't keep pace. $2,640. That's 3 months of groceries for a family of 3. That's a car payment for 7 months. That's the security deposit on a new apartment. Gone, not spent, eroded. And now here's what makes this particular inflation report different from the ones before it. The jump from February to March 2026 was 0.9% in a single month. The biggest single month jump since June 2022. Why does that matter? Because it tells us the direction. Inflation isn't drifting upward by accident. It is accelerating. It picked up speed. And the two things driving it are the two things you absolutely cannot opt out of. Food, the cost of eating. Energy, the cost of moving, heating, existing. These are not luxury goods. You cannot decide not to eat this month because prices are high. You cannot choose not to heat your home because energy costs too much. And yet that is exactly where the pressure is being felt hardest, at the most unavoidable parts of your life. If you are sitting at home right now wondering why it feels harder than it did 2 years ago despite working just as hard, this is why. The numbers confirm what your gut already knew. So the obvious question is, why won't it go away? We were told in 2021 that inflation was transitory, temporary, a blip from the pandemic. We were told in 2023 it was under control. We were told in 2024 it was cooling. And here we are, 2026, and it just posted its biggest monthly jump in 4 years. So either the people in charge are incompetent, Or the situation is more complicated than they've been telling you. I'll let you decide which one you believe. But let me show you the three forces that are keeping inflation alive, because understanding them changes how you see everything. Force 1, tariffs. Since 2025, the United States has operated under one of the most aggressive tariff regimes in modern history. Tariffs are taxes on imported goods. When the cost to import something goes up, the company importing it passes that cost to you, the consumer, always. Goldman Sachs estimated that tariffs added approximately 1 full percentage point to inflation between mid-2025 and mid-2026, 1%, on top of an already elevated baseline. That is the difference between inflation cooling toward the Fed's 2% target and inflation sitting stubbornly at 3.3%. And here's what makes this particularly frustrating. A supply chain shock eventually resolves. A pandemic eventually ends. But tariffs are policy. They are a deliberate choice. They do not automatically go away, which means their inflationary effect does not automatically go away either. Every time you pay more for something that was made or assembled overseas, electronics, clothing, certain foods, a portion of what you're paying is a government tax you never voted on and were never asked about. Force 2. The Federal Reserve is trapped. The Fed's main weapon against inflation is interest rates. Raise rates, borrowing costs more, people spend less, prices cool. That's the theory. But here's the trap they're in right now. The job market slowed significantly through late 2025. Companies stopped hiring at the pace they once were. And when jobs slow, the Fed feels pressure to cut rates, to stimulate the economy and keep unemployment from rising. So they cut rates in late 2025, while inflation was still above target. Think about what that means. They eased the very pressure that was supposed to be cooling inflation because they were scared of something else. And in doing so, they gave inflation a second wind. This is not incompetence, this is a genuine dilemma with no clean solution. But the people paying the price for that dilemma are not the policymakers sitting in Washington. They are you. Force 3. The system is designed to protect wealth, not create it. This is the force nobody wants to talk about. And it is the most important one. Economists call what we're living through a K-shaped recovery. The letter K, two lines starting from the same point, one going up, one going down. For people who own assets, stocks, real estate, investment portfolios, the last several years have been extraordinary. Markets recovered, property values soared, their net worth grew. For people who don't own those assets, who live on their salary, rent their home, have their savings in a bank account, it has been the opposite experience entirely. And here's the brutal connection between those two realities. When wealthy households feel richer because their portfolio went up, they spend more. More demand for goods and services means higher prices. And those higher prices hit everyone, including the people who never owned a single stock, never had an investment account, never saw any of that asset wealth. The wealth of the top drives up the cost of living for everyone else, and the inflation that results falls hardest on the people with the least ability to absorb it. That is not an accident. That is a feature of a system built to protect and grow existing wealth, not to create new wealth for the people who don't already have it. I want to be clear about something before we get into this. Everything I just told you is not meant to make you feel hopeless. It's meant to make you feel informed. Because the only way to protect yourself from a system you don't understand is to first understand it. So here's what you can actually do right now, today, before this video ends. Move 1. Stop letting inflation eat your savings quietly. If your money is sitting in a regular bank savings account right now, it is almost certainly earning somewhere between 0.1% and 0.5% interest. With inflation at 3.3%, that means you are losing roughly 2.8 to 3.2% of your purchasing power every single year. In real terms, just by leaving it there. High-yield savings accounts from institutions like Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally Bank, and SoFi are currently offering between 4.5 and 5% APY. That is not going to beat inflation outright, but it cuts your losses dramatically. This is not complicated. It takes 20 minutes to open one of these accounts online, and the only reason most people haven't done it is because nobody told them they should. Move 2. Audit your monthly costs like your financial life depends on it, because right now it does. Inflation gives every company cover to raise their prices quietly. Insurance premiums creep up at renewal. Streaming services add a few dollars. Subscriptions you forgot about keep charging. Bank fees appear. None of these individually feel significant. Together, they can represent hundreds of dollars a month draining out of your account without you actively choosing to spend them. Go through every recurring charge this week. Cancel anything you don't actively use. Call your insurance company and ask for a loyalty discount or threaten to switch. This works more often than you think. Renegotiate anything with a renewal date coming up. Move 3. Have the conversation you've been avoiding at work. If you have not received a meaningful pay increase in the last 12 months, you have effectively received a pay cut. Not in nominal terms, in real terms. And that is a factual statement you are allowed to bring to your employer. You are not asking for a favor. You are asking to be compensated at the same real value you were a year ago. Frame it that way. Come with the CPI numbers. Come with the cost of living data. Make it a business conversation, not a personal one. The worst they say is no. And if they say no, now you have important information about whether this job is actually keeping pace with your real needs. Move 4. Understand that protecting yourself long-term means owning something. The K-shaped economy we talked about is brutal in one specific way. It rewards ownership. Stocks, index funds, real estate, assets that grow in value as inflation rises, rather than cash that shrinks. I'm not telling you to gamble your savings on individual stocks. I'm telling you that leaving everything in cash and hoping inflation stays low is itself a financial strategy, and historically, it is a losing one. If you have never opened an investment account, now is the time to understand what that means. Low-cost index funds tied to the S&P 500 have historically returned an average of 10% annually over long periods, well above even elevated inflation rates. That gap, 10% return versus 3% inflation, is how generational wealth is actually built. Not through luck, not through insider knowledge, through owning a piece of the economy instead of just working within it. Here's the truth that nobody in mainstream finance wants to say out loud. Inflation at 3.3% is not a bug. It is not a failure. It is the system doing what systems do, redistributing resources from the people who don't understand the rules to the people who wrote them. Every year that your savings sit idle while inflation runs above your interest rate, transfer. Every year, your wages fail to keep pace with the real cost of living, transfer. Every year you don't own any assets while asset prices climb, transfer. Slow, quiet, legal, relentless. That is what broke by design actually means. Not that you're broke because you failed, but that the architecture of the financial world you were born into was constructed deliberately in a way that makes wealth accumulation extraordinarily difficult for the people who start without it. Knowing that changes things. Because once you understand the blueprint, once you see the architecture clearly, you stop blaming yourself and you start making different decisions. That is what this channel exists for. Every single week, we are going to take one piece of the financial system that nobody explains properly, and we are going to explain it, honestly, without jargon, without an agenda, without trying to sell you anything. If this video made you feel something, if it confirmed something you already suspected but couldn't quite name, then subscribe. It's free. And share this with one person in your life who you think needs to hear it. Not because we need the views, but because the information in this video is the kind of information that genuinely changes how people see their financial lives. You weren't born broke. You were built that way. And now you know it. We'll see you next week.